Well, hey there, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into episode number 3 of the Munzee Maniacs Podcast. Kevin here to kick it off this week with just some information I want to add on, developments that have happened with the podcast after we recorded this episode. So first of all, I want to thank all of you Munzee Maniacs out there for your amazing support. There's been great feedback so far about episodes 1 and 2, and some fantastic Munzee Maniacs out there have even left myself and PJ some Munzee gifts. That's right. Here in Shenzhen, China, a city I'm beginning to build for the game, some people have left some amazing greeting cards around my quarantine hotel and some great bouncers, or I should say virtuals, in the downtown area of Shenzhen. As you listen to this right now, I'm out of quarantine, will have been out for a few days, and that is fantastic. Okay, what else we got going on? We've got an email address. That's right. If you want to email us any questions, any stories, you want to come on a future show as a guest, email us at munzeemaniacs@gmail.com. munzeemaniacs@gmail.com. Okay, now, on to the show notes page. So, if you go to munzeemaniacs.blogspot.com, you'll see that now we have an embedded player, so you can just listen right from the show notes page. Also, I've now put the audio of the Munzee Maniacs podcast on YouTube. So I know there's a lot of people out there who prefer to consume their media via YouTube. It's an audio-only thing. It's got a static image of the Munzee Maniacs logo, but you can listen to episodes 1 and 2, and from now on, future episodes will be posted on YouTube as well. Another thing you can do if you'd like. If you'd like to leave us a kind message, an awesome message of support that you would like to hear in the show itself, if you go to anchor.fm/Munzee Maniacs, that's right, anchor.fm/Munzee Maniacs, you can see a leave a message button. And you can leave a message, you can record that, we can grab that, we can add that to an episode. If it's nice, of course. Here in episode number 3, you will notice there's a bit of a weird audio issue with PJ when he talks. There's a lot of reverb happening. We think we know what happened with that, technically. We're still working out the kinks. But for episode number 4, you're going to find a big difference in the sound quality. I'll be back at home in my recording studio where I've got some better microphones, and we'll have things sorted out a lot more. And also, now that when you're listening to this on Tuesday, the 17th, if you're keeping an eye on the Shenzhen, China, map, Munzee, you'll start to see that I've started deploying physicals because I can. And I'm going to deploy physicals over the next few weeks before I introduce the game to friends and colleagues. And I've got a very organized way I'm going to introduce the game to a lot of people to try to really suck them in. But of course, if you build it, they will come, right? So we need some things in Shenzhen before we can really kind of show the game to people. They need something to play, right? Okay, guys. Well, Munzee Maniacs out there, thank you so much for the support, and we're going to kick it off and get right into the show with myself and PJ talking all about a lot of cool Munzee things. All right, folks, welcome to episode number 3 of the Munzee Maniacs Podcast. That's right, we have a name, we have a website, we got it all right now. So
we're living large.
Yeah, we're living large. Okay, guys. So my name's Kevin. I'm a Canadian coming to you from Shenzhen, China, and with me, as always, is my co-host PJ.
Yay! I'm PJ, an American coming to you from Osaka, Japan.
He's in Japan. So while we're recording this episode, I am finishing up day 9 of my quarantine here in China. COVID-19 quarantine, and then on day 14 I will be released and then can live life normally and start growing the game of Munzee in the city of Shenzhen, China. So last week we talked about the do's and don'ts of deploying Munzees. Mostly we kind of focus on physicals and whatnot, but we did touch on a little bit about virtuals. And this week I wanted to look at, it's kind of more of a beginner's type of thing, but bouncers, because I know that I'm going to have friends and colleagues who are going to start playing the game. Those of you out there who may be on the Munzee Newbies Facebook page or anywhere else in the world, if you're new to it, the concept of bouncers is something that it took me a while to wrap my head around. So PJ, you're the one who introduced me to this game. You know more about it than I do. And I know you do. We definitely do not claim to be experts. I mean, we're both, relatively speaking, new to the game. But for those out there listening, I mean, now guys, I know if you're a veteran player, hey, you know what this is, but bear with us. PJ, what is a bouncer? Because that's a term that new Munzee players will hear a lot of.
A bouncer is one of three general categories of Munzee. We talked about physicals and virtuals in the last two episodes. And as you've alluded to, bouncers are a kind of third category. Loosely, according to the Munzee terminology page, a bouncer is a Munzee that bounces from one to another Munzee around the world.
Okay.
Very loosely, they can be myths, nomads, they're specialty bouncers, they're themed creatures, and they're just cute little icons or characters, silly or scary or funny, and they can be owned by players, owned by clans, or owned by the company itself, and they literally go from Munzee to Munzee, either physical to virtual or virtual to virtual or whatever. It depends on the type.
Yeah.
And we like them so much because we've learned quite slowly in PJ's case that this is where the big points are. And if you care about points for the game, which many don't, but if you do, this is the way you move ahead, is by buying, by putting in the field, and by capping bouncers.
That's right. So for those of you out there who are new to the game, and you flip open your app on your phone and you look at it, and maybe you see a lot of the green icons around, you'll see a few virtuals around that kind of with the V and this and that. But every once in a while you'll see some kind of strange looking character on one of those physical Munzees. It could be a Pegasus, it could be some kind of little like a leprechaun or a banshee or something like this. Now that standard physical Munzee that might be worth 20 points when you cap it, all of a sudden becomes a lot more valuable when there's a bouncer there. That could be worth 200 points. Normally, that's kind of the rule of thumb, 200 points, right? And even if that's a Munzee you've already capped, when that bouncer appears, you can go back and get it. So I know, like, when I was living in Osaka, I used to always tell PJ at night, I would go for a walk every night, and I would always open my Munzee app to decide where I was going to go to walk, because I would normally look for bouncers. And if I saw a bouncer, then I knew where I was going tonight for my walk. Yeah.
And it's one of the things that distinguishes other games like geocaching, which I still love. But one of the issues I've always had with geocaching is that once you cap everything in your area, there's not a lot more to do locally. And that you've got to keep traveling, which is a good part of the game. But what I like about Munzee for me is that by growing the map locally, and we both have spent a lot of time and energy growing that map, when you do that, you are rewarded by bouncers visiting the physicals and the virtuals that you've placed, so that you and I, even though we've capped everything in our area, can still go, like you said, on a typical night, get some exercise. You have an afternoon with the kids, or by yourself if you just want some peace of mind, and you're just out there, and you can look for bouncers, and you capture just one, and as what's your name again? As the other guy said, Kevin, I was being silly, but that didn't turn out to be funny, did it? They're typically worth 200 points. They can be worth less. 99, 150 are also common point values. Some go up to and beyond 500 or even 1,000 points. It's rare. I think typically it's 200, and so you could go out and just walking in your neighborhood, if you have a sufficiently populated area, even if you, the one who populated those Munzees. Yeah. And normally in another game like geocaching, you can't, once you've placed them, you can't do anything with them. Whereas here, you're going to be able to, if there's a new bouncer on a Munzee nearby, be it virtual or physical, you can go out and, in most cases, cap it and get points for it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a wonderful thing. Because especially like when you introduced me to the game not there long after, in the spring of this year, 2020, this year of suckage, Japan kind of went down on a, partial lockdown. But at the end of the day, those of us who were concerned about our own health and stuff, we chose to avoid public transit as much as possible. So I was having to hoof it around on foot. Now, I'm an obsessive walker, but at the same time, it was great.
You really is.
Yeah, I really am. But it was really great to have, again, like I said, to have player pieces popping up, these things that I could play in my neighborhood. Now, of course, you mentioned, there are some that are bigger. I know there's the term the nomad bouncers, which I believe it was announced by Munzee HQ this month that there's some new Z-Ops nomads that are going to be out there bouncing around at some point. And I hope you get one of those. That's really wonderful if it's on one of your own. I remember capping a few nomad bouncers that appeared on my own because I got 500 points for capping it, and then like 250 points in cap-ons. So that bouncer was worth like 750 points, and I got a couple of those in the summertime, which was pretty exciting. But yeah, so I was probably several months into the game before I realized that people could own bouncers.
Yeah.
And even longer until I finally purchased a few of my own. So, PJ, can you maybe tell us, the folks that are listening, a little bit about that, POBs or player-owned bouncers? What's up with that? What's the deal?
Well, this is, like you've alluded to, this is an aspect of the game a lot of people don't get into, in part because it's money.
Yeah.
And this is a freemium game where you don't need the app, and most activities that you do, you can do completely free of charge. Mm. But if you're going to buy your own bouncers, it's money. And most of them typically go for $20. I've seen a few that are higher. There are a few that are lower as well, but I'd say almost 80% of them seem to be about $20. And what you do is when you purchase it, as soon as the purchase goes through, it's deployed out into the world. And so for a lot of players, if you're not using supplemental apps like Cup-a-Z, I want to give a shout out to them because that's a great app.
That's what I use too.
Or even Munzee's, the Z app that gives you point scores and such. A lot of people don't realize that, I bought that and nothing's happening. Because they may not pay careful attention to the notifications, and it's easy to lose it. But these go out. I currently have, in fact, if I look on my phone, I'm going to use the Cup-a-Z app, which is a third-party app, but I like it very much because it collates a lot of data that otherwise you have to do quite a bit of work to find.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at, it says one of the categories is your bouncers.
Yeah.
And these are either bouncers that I've purchased, again, $20 a pop, usually, or I've been awarded. Sometimes you're awarded them for activities in Z-Ops or clan achievements or other contests and specialties. But, for example, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bouncers currently in the field, about, again, half of which I've paid for. One is currently in France. Another is in Poland. I got 3 in the U.S. and 1 in Taiwan.
Oh, very nice. I'm trying to open Cup-a-Z right now, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm trying to open up Cup-a-Z right now, but it takes forever on my phone. Ironically, I have an iPhone 11, but it's really slow, especially on the bouncers page. So I've got 2 purchase bouncers. I've got 2 Tobas's, and I paid $10 each for those. But then, like you said, I've been probably, I don't know, almost a month before I left Japan, I started playing Z-Ops. And a lot of my rewards were some great, virtual Munzees, some of those night vision goggles. But I also I got several spider bots. So those are like a temporary bouncer that I was rewarded. I think they could be captured, is it 3 times or 5 times? 3 times, maybe?
To be honest, I'd have to look it up, but it's something like that.
Yeah, so I don't know where my bouncers are right now because Cup-a-Z won't open on my phone at the moment. But I'm going to close it up and try again later. Maybe I can tell people where my bouncers are. But
the challenges of playing geolocation games in China.
Exactly right. VPNs.
There you go.
Yeah. So okay. So we've already inform the folks a little bit about the bouncers, and when you do capture a bouncer, when you see a bouncer, you can actually see if it is a player-owned bouncer. You can see the username. So if it was one of mine, you'd see Busan Kevin. If it was one of yours, you'd see PJ. Okay, here we go. I've got 3. I've got one in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've got one in Saint-Aude, Wallonia, Belgium, and one that is at a Carrefour in Flanders, Belgium right now. So I've got, wow, there you go. I've got 2 in Belgium and 1 in the United States. So yeah, and those are a great little way to get points. You know, if someone caps one of my bouncers, I get an additional, I get 250 points, which is great.
It's also a great way to connect yourself with other players. Sometimes I'll get a message from somebody that says, thanks from South Dakota, or hello from South Korea. It's rare, because many of us don't leave a message when we cap a bouncer. I don't usually. But sometimes they do, and that's nice. And whether you're using the Cup-a-Z app or using the website from Munzee directly, you can see where these are in the world, and that's kind of a neat thing to see that they're moving around the world and how the game is, you know, that you really kind of feel it kind of connects you or binds you to other players.
Well, I think I shared with you that really cool moment that happened during the summer. I thought it was pretty cool, where I was out late one night in Osaka on a big walk, and there was a treehouse, and there were some bouncers in it, and I capped it, and one of the bouncers happened to belong to, I recognize his username because he's in my social, but Joshua, who is the geocaching vlogger, who makes a lot of videos about, who in the past has made videos about Munzee, but he's kind of a prolific, well-known geocaching figure. I know my 7-year-old daughter loves his videos. She's been binging them while we're in quarantine here in China. But it was really cool. It's like, oh wow, I actually am familiar with the person who owns this bouncer. So I thought that was pretty neat. Okay, so
I mean, he's famous, at least within geolocation games.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a famous person to capture your bouncer, it's a cool moment.
That is a very cool moment when I'm like, wow, this is like a guy whose videos I've been watching for several years. Like, this is neat. Yeah. So, and also kind of shows how, you know, the Munzee world can be kind of small sometimes as well.
Yeah. Can I mention something for a second? Because earlier you had said something about a treehouse.
Yeah.
We should explain that part of the reason why I said bouncers are for people who will spend money on the game is because in addition to buying bouncers and putting them out in the field, many of us, including myself and you, spend money to find bouncers, and there's something called a magnet. And, you know, bouncers are out there on an algorithm which only headquarters knows, but they come and go with the time of day and the season and the weather. Who knows?
Yeah.
So sometimes there'll be like 5 in my neighborhood, other times there'll be none for hours or days.
Yeah.
And one way around that is to buy for roughly $1 is a magnet, which you can place on a Munzee, which will attract bouncers, and that again multiplies the number and the frequency in which you will encounter them. I think both you and I are on a 1 or 2 magnets a day kind of diet.
Yeah.
Some people are a little bit more strict, and once a month or whatever. The other thing to think about is destination Munzees are Munzees where bouncers go in multiple numbers, like a sky tree. Is it sky tree?
Yeah, sky tree.
Sky tree or tree house, and there are others as well, where numbers up to 6 and occasionally 7.
I've gotten 7. I've kept 7 before.
Yeah, I never have, and it's kind in the Munzee world it's mythical because the rules say 6. But many people have reported the occasion.
It happened once on one of your tree houses I went to, and I magnetized it, and 7 appeared.
And you know, when you get that, as Kevin alluded earlier, that's up to 1,400 points. Because if they're between 100 and 200 points each, normally 200, you're talking about boku points.
Yeah.
So on a typical day, I'll spend $1 magnetizing. English is hard for me. Magnetizing one of these destination Munzees, like a treehouse.
Yeah.
And it'll go from the 1 or 2 bouncers that are already inhabiting it, and they're there for a limited hour. They'll be there for anywhere from between an hour and 12 hours, I believe.
I think, yeah. Usually, normally, if you're going to magnetize it, the last one will stick around for about 11 hours.
But even with, just normally bouncers travel every hour to every 12 hours, I think.
Yeah, I think the shortest I've ever seen is like 3 hours or so that it's in one place. But yeah, they move around.
They move around. So if you magnetize it, then like 5, 6, in theory 7 will show up, and you cap that, and that's 1,400 points. Meanwhile, your friend's going out and doing the hard work of capping physicals, and he gets 100, and that's only, 100 times 19. It's not a lot. So if you care about numbers, bouncers are going to be a part of your game.
Yeah, and if you're quarantined in a hotel in China like I am right now, that's all I got. So, like, my first day here, I put a virtual outside, and then my son put a virtual, and then, because he's in the next room, and then you and another kind Munzee player put a few else around me, and then that's what I've been doing. I spend 1 magnet a day, and that's what I do while I'm here. And when I do get out, I've got a few Treehouse credits and a Skyland credit ready to go, and when I start deploying things in the local area, I'm going to strategically place those so I can enjoy them and reap the rewards, but other players can reap the rewards as well, of course.
Certainly, yeah.
So there's we could obviously really deep dive into this, but we don't want to do that for the sake of time and just for not overwhelming people with information. But there's a few, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I make one suggestion? And we both know personally some people who need to learn this. Uh-oh, I'm going to get in trouble with that. Bouncers are so confusing that nobody knows all the rules, the cap, the deploy, the range points, how close they can be located together. But so we often get questions from fellow players and from groups like the Munzee Water Cooler or the Munzee for Beginners. Yeah. But it drives me crazy because if people just learn the power of Google, if you type in the word Munzee plus bouncer plus whatever it is, if you know, you will come up. They have the frequently asked questions, and Munzee, although they don't organize it very well, they have a huge database of information on all of the bouncers as well as the physicals and rituals. But bouncers is so confusing that you could be playing for years and still not know how close they can be together or how often they appear or how many cap-on points you get. And the only way to do that, whenever I get that question, I breathe in, breathe out, and then I just search on Google or Bing or whatever. I'm not pushing names here. But no one can expect to know every bouncer and every the parameters of that particular bouncer.
Yeah, exactly.
And the best thing to do is look it up.
And there's always new ones coming out. I think, if you look at I was just looking at the November like newsletters that came out with like Munzee News, and they've got like they introducing the new bouncers that show up in the virtual Munzee packs or the Munzee or the hybrid Munzee packs, and there's like Christmas ones now. There's like a llama with a Santa hat and different ones, and there's seasonal ones, and they come and they go and they change, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to mention, a couple that if I have the time and I have the ability to move around, I love. But then sometimes it can be the bane of my existence if I'm on a limited schedule and I got to get somewhere fast. Are the Aphrodites and is it Neptune? Is that right?
No,
Poseidon.
Yeah,
so those are special ones, and when they show up, they make the world a bit more special. So not only do you get the 200 points for capping the Aphrodite or the Poseidon, but they throw out more bouncers.
Which brings us to a whole different category, and we'll talk on a different day. The game Munzees that often have several levels of you capture one, it spreads to another, and then spreads to another. And the Poseidons and the Aphrodites are bouncers that you get them, and sure enough, more virtuals appear.
Yep.
And like Kevin says, if you've got the time and the energy, they're a joy.
Yeah.
If you happen to be going someplace on an errand or with kids or on the way to work, then it hurts your soul to leave points on the field.
Yep, that's right, because each one will throw 3 bouncers that are valued at 50 points each, and then sometimes I'm like, I can get one, but the other 2 are so far away, and I've got to I gotta be at work now, or I've got to go pick up my kid from here, and
or when they appear in an area you can't get, like over the bay or behind a security fence, or because they're randomly distributed, or semi-randomly. I think there is a pattern, but nonetheless, sometimes even when you have the time, you just can't reach them.
Yeah, that happened to me recently in Osaka with a night vision goggle that I capped, and then it threw a bouncer into the Osaka Dome Stadium, and with the stadium which is closed. And I was walking all around the perimeter of that stadium. No matter where I went, I could not get close enough to cap it. So bouncers are a really interesting part of the game. And I think, when you're a new player, it is a bit, again, like you said, overwhelming. But even just, to learn a little bit more about them, if you do even go to like Munzee.com to your account, there is a section right up at the top with all the tabs that says Meet the Bouncers, or Meet the Munzees. And so each one, like the mythical creatures, it's got a little story behind it, what it is. So, and
you're learning not just what it is, but how close you have to be to cap it, how many points you get, whether they shed off other bouncers, like the gaming Munzee, generally. Yeah, there are so many details that I don't think anyone can be expected to know everything. But like you said, if they just do a little bit of searching, going to the Munzee.com website, or just searching Munzee/bouncer, you're going to come up with pages and pages, mostly from the Munzee site itself. And I always get questions from friends who play, what is this, or how does it work? And again, I look it up and then shoot them the page, but I want to encourage people to do that themselves, because it's unlike maybe physical rules for physicals or the basic virtuals, which can be learned and memorized. Bouncers are so varied, you really do have to look them up.
And sometimes, like you said already, we've talked about, sometimes there seems to be no rhyme, no reason. And you and I have had this discussion before, where there was one neighborhood I was living in for quite a while in Osaka, where for a period of time I would literally have 2, 3, 4 appear a night in my neighborhood, and then all of a sudden there'd be a week with just nothing. It was a dearth.
No.
It's just like, where'd they go? And then all of a sudden they're back again. So for those out there who are new to the game, when you see a bouncer appear, it's definitely worth your while to go out if you got the time and cap one, because that's about the same point value of capping, say, 10 regular physical QR codes. So it's definitely worth your while. And even if it is a Munzee that belongs to you, or one that you've already captured, you can still capture that bouncer. Yeah.
It makes the game, no matter, I shouldn't say no matter where you are, because if there's nothing in your area, then it's not going to help you. But if there's only ones that you've already capped, and whether you deploy them, as Kevin said, or another person deployed them, you can still play the bouncers, and that makes it a game for those that go a little crazy, like you have and I have, and saturate an area or a city or a region of the world.
Yeah.
When you do that, you're helping other people. Sure, you're building a community, yes, but you're also helping yourself.
Yeah. So the way I look at it, for example,
creating landing spots.
Yeah. So when I get out of quarantine this upcoming weekend, so when you guys hear this, I'm going to drop these always on Tuesday. When you guys hear this podcast, if you're listening to it on the first day release, I will have been out of quarantine for a couple of days, and I will have already started building the game in Shenzhen. I've been building it using virtuals, but I'll be on the ground planting physicals. And the thing is, I don't plan to... I plan to spend about a month of building the area before I kind of get friends and colleagues involved, because I want to be able to get a group of friends and be like, download this app, and when they open it up, they can see there's a bunch of stuff they can do. But in the meantime, like in the movie Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. So if just by myself putting some, greenies out there and other physicals in the area and different neighborhoods and parks, I know that before I kind of introduce it to colleagues and friends, I'm going to be able to go out there at night and cap some bouncers, because they're going to be appearing. Yeah. So, PJ, I think that's about it for this episode. We don't want to run too long. That's, about 25 minutes or so, which is great.
How very reasonable of us.
Exactly, right? PJ, how can those folks out there... First of all, how can they find you on Munzee? If anyone wants to add you to their social on Munzee.
That's a good question. I'm trying to look what is...
I believe you're just PJ, right? I think you're just Peejay, all lowercase.
You are correct, yes. Peejay, one word.
Yeah, okay, cool. And for anyone out there who's listening who wants to add me to their social on the game Munzee, I'm Busan Kevin. That's capital B, U-S-A-N, capital K-E-V-I-N, Busan Kevin.
Can I also encourage people to friend people? Because unlike Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's a one-way friend. So if you see someone in the game that's in your neighborhood whom you want to follow, or a famous person or something, whatever, you can follow them. They won't know, and you also won't know anything personal about them. You'll only know their contemporary stats.
Yeah.
So, it's not like, let's say, in Facebook, I'm afraid to send a friend invite to someone I don't know. They'll reject me or whatever. This is different. When I befriended Kevin, he didn't know I befriended him. Sorry, that's a weird example, but you can friend anyone you want, and it's especially great if you find someone playing in your area to friend them in the game so you can see how other players are playing in your region.
Yeah, definitely. And for those out there, of course, we now have a website. We've got Munzee Maniacs.blogspot.com. So that's kind of the landing page for the podcast. Episodes 1 and 2 are out there. This episode will be there too. A little bit about information about myself and PJ. So that's munzeemaniacs.blogspot.com. The podcast is now on all major podcatcher places. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, a whole bunch of other places. Spotify, Anchor FM, Pocket Cast, a bunch of them. So go check it out there. Spread the word, folks. Definitely, if you have some friends who play Munzee, share the podcast with them. We really appreciate that. And PJ, how can people find you?
The best way is on Instagram. I'm a big Instagrammer. I'm not a big Instagrammer. I'm big into Instagram, and that would be Kansai, which is the region of Japan that I live in. KANSAI _PEE_JAY. There's a theme there.
Cool. And for those of you who want to find me, I usually am all over the place on Twitter. That's my spot. So you can follow me on Twitter at Mad4Maple. Folks, thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of the Munzee Maniacs Podcast. PJ, thank you for joining me again this week.
Thank you for having me and for doing all the hard work of editing, hosting, and putting it together. I just show up and chat. You do the hard work, so thank you.
No problem. I enjoy doing it. All right, folks. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Oh, wait. Actually, hold on. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Folks, before we do sign off, the first 3 episodes have been out 1 week at a time, but as of this episode dropping, we're going to be going to a twice-a-month schedule. Unless anything else changes, that's just a little more reasonable for us. So once every 2 weeks, or as they would say in the UK, once every fortnight.
There you go.
All right. See you later, folks.
Bye-bye.